All right, thanks for coming out tonight. I always like to start by saying that this is going to be a little bit interactive. Hold on here. Is there a way to turn the volume down behind me? I had a lot of echo. Okay.
It sounds good here.
What's that? All right, so as we start tonight, this has got to be interactive. If I'm going to sit up here and just dictate for an hour or so, you're going to get pretty bored and I'm probably going to get hoarse. So if you have questions, jump in. I'll add a little pause at the end of each section so that we can answer any open questions. So let's start off with who here is familiar with turnkey investing? All right. Can someone give me an explanation of what that is? I'm going to pick on you in the back because you're sitting at my level. All the way to the back here. Go for it.
Basically, someone sells you a property with it's all fixed up, there's a tenant already in it, and you're ready to go ahead and run all paint.
Okay, so that's great. So to reiterate, somebody sells you a house with a tenant already in it or a property in good enough condition to move into. Is that fairly reiterated? All right. Any other takes on it? Anybody else have a different definition?
Well, it's a business that seeks properties that can be undervalued. They rehab them, put a tenant in them, market them to investors, and then may or may not outsource management, or they may have in-house management, depending on the company.
Sure.
And then they sell that to investors, and that's turnkey property investment.
Awesome. Okay, great. There's two, different definitions with basically the same underlying points. Jason, can you go to the next slide? All right. So the idea of turnkey investing, as was described here, is that somebody else is doing this for you. If you're an investor that's looking at a turnkey deal, I've heard from agents and wholesalers, that this is a turnkey rental, it's ready to go, and you look at pictures and you wouldn't be sure if you put your dog in there. I've also seen providers that they really give you a hands-on, an investment that you can invest in real estate hands-free, right? Anybody here ever heard of Memphis Invest? They kind of corner the market. They're I don't know. They do a lot of turnkey investments in Memphis, Tennessee. They also have 2 operations in Texas as well. And they kind of set the standard across the board where they deliver a finished product, and their value add is in their management, right? And that's a lot of the value that goes into a turnkey investment. Tonight, what I'd like to talk about is first define what a turnkey investment is, and then get into all of the different parts that go into it. I've had the benefit of being a real estate investor for the last 12 years. Started out as a flipper and failed terribly into wholesaling. Did really well at wholesaling and owned a property management company. I've been flipping a good number of properties every year for the last probably 5 years, and I've got a rental portfolio. My company provides hands-free investments. I'm not here to pitch anybody on anything. I just want to talk to you about, if you're thinking about putting together your own rental properties, you want to build a rental portfolio, there are some really important factors that you can put into your rentals if you start with the end in mind that will benefit you long term. And really that's the model that I've developed and I'm going to go over today. All right, sound good? Great, all right, great. So, what is a turnkey rental? It's a cash flow rental that incorporates all the key factors of a successful real estate investment. All the owner has to do is turn the key and collect the rent. So today we're going to talk about these different areas. Number 1, finding the deals. Number 2, the investment analysis. And you know what? I realized I put this up here. I'm going to talk about it, but I forgot to put the slide in, so excuse me. Renovation management, leasing and tenant screening, and then project management. Okay? Hold on here. Okay, so finding deals. Who here has any problems finding their own deals? At good numbers, all right? Anybody in here marketing for their own leads and negotiating their own deals? Great, awesome. All right, so With my turnkey business, 90% of my leads come from wholesalers. Now, I'm going to go into why in a second, right? But my model is essentially a wholesale model where I'm adding value in the price of the property, in overseeing construction, and then in the leasing and the management. So I can get a property from a wholesaler or a bank or an agent or local banks in other areas, and I'm able to add value above and beyond their wholesale fee, right? So it's pretty advantageous because my marketing costs for the properties are almost nothing. We hold networking events and meet a lot of wholesalers, but the idea is to build your business around other people's marketing dollars, okay? If you're here because you want to build a rental portfolio, and the foundation of your lead generation is the money that you're putting into generating those leads, well, it's kind of limited by your bank account, right? Unless you're going to be buying a ton of properties, it probably doesn't scale to spend $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 a month to get enough leads that you can find a couple jewels. But you'd be happy to pay 5 wholesalers $5,000 a piece for each of the properties they're selling you, if you can get the properties at the right numbers, right? I mean, who here uses wholesalers to invest? Anybody? Okay. Where's everybody else finding their deals? Because there's a lot of, we had about 3 people doing their own marketing, and we got a handful of people doing wholesaling, or buying from wholesalers. Who here, where's everybody else finding the rest of their deals?
From Zillow.
What's that?
Zillow, Realtor.
From Zillow,
Yeah.
Zillow and Realtors?
Yeah.
Okay. So like direct from a seller, but the lead's coming from Zillow? Or actually from the agents?
No, I first searched in Zillow, especially the sell by owner,
Okay.
and then after that I contact the.
Great. So the sell by owner on Zillow? Great. Okay. Have you had some success with that?
Sorry?
Have you had success finding deals there?
Yeah.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Somebody else?
It's a real estate agents.
Say it again?
Real estate agents.
Real estate agents.
I apologize.
Real estate agents.
Sorry. Yeah, real estate agents are a great source. Now, you get a real cross-section of quality from agents, so it's important to be able to clearly define what you're looking for in a property, right? And that's something that is part of the model that you're going into when you're getting into a real estate investment. Typically, when you're looking at a rental, you're going to be wanting to look in neighborhoods where you've got a lot of upside potential, right? So, we got a lot of. Is this me or is this?
I don't know. I'll look closer to your mouth.
Okay. We got a lot of upside potential, and what I mean by that is, okay, so that today you can see that a neighborhood is primarily a rental area. Okay. Ideally, in a neighborhood that has about 60 to 65% owner occupancy. All right. So that leaves, what, 35% to 40% of the neighborhood are tenants. Okay, so this is kind of the jumping off point. From there, we're looking at neighborhoods that have a good, consistent rental history. You've got areas that, based on either your knowledge or the people around you, there are areas that tenants typically pay rent. They're gonna show up and take good care of the property. You don't want to be investing in neighborhoods where the cash flow might look really great on paper, but then you're investing in an area where you're picking up a property for $20,000, painting carpet, and then you put a tenant in. That can be a big disaster in an area where the tenants just can't afford to pay the rent. So we want to be in an area that is probably about a C plus to maybe a B minus area, where you've got, it's typically a working class neighborhood where people make enough money to live there and pay the rent. Once we've identified that area, all right, so now we're going to go out and look for these properties. I'm going to network with as many wholesalers as I can. This is what I find, is that in the neighborhoods that I'm looking for, I find the best deals either with established wholesalers, and that is, probably some people that are typically in this room. Terry Royce is one of them. He's not here tonight. But you're also finding them in newer wholesalers. There's a lot of people that are getting into the business that they don't have a lot of contacts, and You meet them at a networking event, you meet them at a meetup group or an REI, event or a re-event, and you make these connections. And hey, he's got 10 people on his mailing list, right? And it just so happens you're one of them. Whoever it is that you're dealing with, whether it's your wholesalers or real estate agents or just referrals or whatever, if somebody hands you a lead or an opportunity, respond. My best relationships with wholesalers were built because I get an email as part of the big marketing blast and I respond to it. Hey, this isn't quite what I'm looking for. If you have anything in this neighborhood, in this price range, let me know. Well, guess what? 2 days later, he gets a lead in that neighborhood and I'm getting a phone call even before he has the deal. This doesn't happen if you just do this once. It has to be the kind of thing that you can consistently repeat over and over and over again. You're making a lot of offers, and just like if you are, if you're out, making offers on the MLS or in person or whatever, you've got to do the calculations. You've got to end up with an offer that is acceptable for you, regardless of what they're going to ask for the property. And so, with that in mind, you're making a lot of offers. You're going to get a lot of no's. Just keep making the offers, right? Keep going. Okay. So a lot of people ask me, why don't I market for my own deals? Like, why don't we spend time developing this area of the business? Essentially what the turnkey model is it's a vehicle where you have 3 or 4 separate businesses just combined under one umbrella. This is not one of the businesses under the umbrella. It's probably the most complicated, and because of the price point that we're going to be buying, there's the least amount of value add. It's very complicated. You have to have people answering phones, sending out marketing, coordinating negotiations and meeting homeowners and contracting and all that kind of stuff. When the value add here for me is I might get the property at $10,000 cheaper, but think about the investment that I have to make in time and energy and effort to build that part of the business. If you're buying for your own investment to flip the house or for a buy and hold, I've found consistently across the board the best lead source is from wholesalers. Now that, again, doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen in an environment where you have 10 offers on the property in the first hour, but if you're patient and you build those relationships, you get really good deals out of those, okay? Kind of next one. All right. Anybody in here have a crazy contractor story? No? Okay, somebody give me one of them. Most outrageous, well, I'll tell you what, you got any HMB t-shirts on you? Okay, so I have, right now, I've got 14 construction projects underway. We manage every project in person every single day. And I'm working with contractors that consistently get work from me. It's been less than a month since I've been screwed by a contractor. And is this on? It's not on.
I'm screaming, just talk loud enough.
Okay, so it's been a really short amount of time since I got screwed from a contractor, right? And these are people that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. They make a lot of money from paychecks that I'm writing out to them and their companies. So if you are entering the field and you're trying to hire a contractor, start from the premise that you're probably going to get screwed. So we have to, right? We want to limit our exposure as much as humanly possible and find the very best human beings we can work with within the field, okay? Now, there's a couple ways that we can do this. If you're starting from scratch and you don't know anybody in the business and you have you don't know one good contractor at all, start by going to local supply houses. I'm not talking about Home Depot. I'm talking about local lumber yards and plumbing supply houses, electrical supply houses. Go and hang out. Talk to the people that work at the front desk, who they see coming in and going out of the business constantly. Who's got a lot of work or who's looking for work. And I mean, that's at least a place for you to get your foot in the door. A couple months ago, who was the guy that did all his flips around the country, that managed them from?
Jay Scott.
Was it Chris Young?
Jay Scott.
Jay Stoddard? Jay Scott spoke, I think it was in July, about how he manages all these projects across the country. And I took one thing away from the speaking engagement, is that every time, when he was trying to learn construction, he and his wife, they were trying to learn construction. It was the first time in the business. They would hire they would get 3 bids on every part of the project. So they get 3 electricians, 3 plumbers, whatever. He did that so he could get 3 different stories about what's wrong with his house, right? So he gets a home inspection before he buys the place. Now he calls up an electrician. The electrician comes out and walks him through the electrical in the house. And the first time through, he picks up maybe 50%. He's making notes. Second time through, he does the same thing. So by the time he goes through this a second time, he's got a lot of knowledge of this house and how the electrical works and what should be there and what shouldn't be. And by the time we get to the third inspection, he can pick out which of the guys is full of it, and which ones are giving him a good price. By going through this process a few times, you start with one house, you do 3 per trade, you end up in a situation where you can have there we go, thanks. You can have a conversation with a contractor in detail about what they're planning to do at a project, define a scope of work that works for the 2 of you, and come up with a price that is a reasonable number based on your market and based on the work that's being done. The only way that you can do that, though, is put the time in to walk through 3 random contractors that may or may not be good. It's likely that at least one of them is going to try to charge you too much. One of them is probably going to try to, cut some corners, and their prices are going to be really low. And who knows? Maybe you'll get 3 great contractors, and they're $10 apart. Then you got a real problem on your hands. But typically, it becomes pretty easy to find, a good contractor in each of the trades that you would need for a project. Now, this is something that. If you can find one good contractor, one person that you can count on and trust, it's not an accident that good contractors like working with other good contractors. So, oftentimes they know other people in the business, and your plumber knows a carpenter, and he knows an electrician, he knows a guy that does HVAC, and a roofer, and a window guy, and you start collecting business cards and collecting relationships based on that. Building out your team is a very, very vital part in having success. Now, I've got I have a different view on rental side investing that a lot of people do. And you might think I'm wrong. I might be wrong, but I've seen a lot of success with it. And that is this: when I go and look at a property, I'm going to look at this house and try to determine is there anything here that doesn't have at least a 10-year shelf life. How long is the heater going to last? When was the last time it was installed? 15 years ago? Okay. Well, what's the life of the heater? 20 years? Okay. It's got 5 years left. I'm probably going to replace it. The roof, same kind of thing. It's a 15-year flat roof. It's 5 years old. There's 10 years there, but what's the cost or reward here? If I put on another roof for $2,500, that probably makes sense. And I go through this, and I go through the house, and I'm looking at all of the major mechanicals, the electrical and the plumbing, the heating system, the roof, the windows, the flooring. I'm making sure that everything first is working properly, and then is going to last for a long time. Because a $4,000 or $5,000 heater, amortized over 20 or 30 years, it's not much every month. But if you're in the middle of your first year of renting this place out, and the heater conks out in the middle of the winter, you're going to pay $4,000, and there's a year and a half of cash flow. So you want to go into this thing knowing what your expenses are going to be. You want to have as much fixed cost as you can, and the only way to do that is to go in with the assumption that we're going to improve this property to a point where everything in the house has a shelf life of at least 10 years. Okay. All right. So to get that done, oftentimes your renovations are going to be pretty extensive. I know that in our places in Philadelphia, on a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom row house, we're going to spend about $45,000. And that's top to bottom. It's a pretty comprehensive rehab. If you're talking about a freestanding house, or a detached house in Columbia, you might be talking about $60,000, or because of the time frame that it was built, maybe you don't have to do the electric. Maybe the plumbing's fine. Maybe your renovation's $25,000 or $30,000. But you got to know what that is based on the condition of the property and what your current market is in construction. Part of that is going to be finding the best contractors you can and being able to manage them well. And so the contractors, finding the contractors is the first piece, and manage them is the second. Can you go to the next one? Go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So this is one of my favorite quotes, business quotes. What gets measured gets managed. Okay, so it's important that you pay attention to the right stuff during your renovation. If you're paying attention to the wrong things, you might be harping on a contractor, but the right stuff's not getting done. So what we want to do pre-construction is make sure that we've got a game plan moving forward. I don't think there's one professional sports team that enters into a competition without a game plan on how to win. But all the time, people get into rehab projects without even having a contractor in place, let alone a game plan on how to get from where that place starts to where they want it to end up. And so, putting the time in, even if you have to delay the start of a project, it makes a heck of a lot more sense to delay for a week or two the start and get all your ducks in a row and get all your process ready to go beforehand. When we're looking at a project, the first thing I'm going to do is define my finishes, okay? And what I mean by that, and anybody, I'm going to have a stack of cards here. Anybody that emails me, I'll send you my finish list on our rental properties, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute here. But here's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to take all of the decision out of my contractor's hands. There's nothing worse than having a house 99% done, and the contractor goes to Home Depot and picks up the ugliest vanity that you ever saw and puts it in your house. And he's standing there, he's like, isn't this great? I took my initiative, I went out and I got this taken care of, and it's like, we got a gray tone in the house and you got this ugly brown vanity in my beautiful bathroom, So I want to take that off his plate. The other thing I want to do is I want to be able to know my costs, and the only way I can do that is to know what material is going into the house. So I want to pick out my flooring, I want to pick out all of my paint colors. Paint colors are a really big deal with a rental property. So I had a client, it was actually my very first property management client. This is years ago, and this guy used to evict every one of his 27 tenants every 9 months. Great plan for success, right? Well, it became very apparent really quick that turnover costs were going to sink the guy. And turnover costs are what it costs you to get the place ready to rent every time a tenant moves out. Two of the biggest costs are going to be carpet replacement and painting the property. If you have to paint every time you get rid of a tenant, it's $2,000. You're going to replace the carpet, it's $2,000. There's $4,000 without any damage on the house. So if I can eliminate those expenses up front by doing some smart renovations, like picking the same paint colors on every single house and every single unit that we ever do, great. That's a start. Now I can paint one wall and know that it's going to match the rest of them without having to worry about painting the whole house. So I'm looking at paint colors. I'm looking at the vanities and the cabinets in the kitchen and what kind of countertops and what kind of lighting fixtures, down to the point where I know exactly what it's going to cost me to renovate this house, and I can put together material lists before we walk out of the property. All right, that's the first thing. Get consistent. Get your game plan, make a list of materials for every room of the property, all of the surfaces, so that you know what the costs are going to be and what the property is going to look like when you're done. Right? Second, we want to define our scope of work. This can be kind of tough. With a flip, I always recommend look at the comps. Copy the best of your competition and make it a little bit better. That's great. When you're talking about rentals, I learned something pretty interesting. So if you're staying in the C+, B- neighborhoods, you get a heck of a cross section of humanity. You've got people that are really just basically living just above the poverty line, and you have people making six figures and driving luxury cars. That's great. I want to attract the luxury car buyers. I want the people with six-figure incomes and 720 credit scores. The only way I'm going to do that is if I'm targeting the higher end of my rental market. And again, the only way I'm going to do that is if I have nice finished product. So we still want to be in that mid-grade rental area, but we want to attract those good tenants. So, and basically what I do when I'm putting my scope of work together is I have my finishes, I know what they are. I'm going to go in the farthest room from the house, and I just start dictating into my phone and start recording. Well, it looks like the ceiling is banged up here. We're going to replace the light. We'll get rid of the baseboards and rip out the carpets. We have 2 windows in this back bedroom, and the closet doors are terrible. They got to come out. Walk to the next room. Now I walk down the hallway, and I'm making notes as I go room to room to room. And in 15 or 20 minutes, I've gone through this whole property, and I've dictated everything that needs to be done here. Now, from the dictation, I put that away. Now I'm going to go back to the first room I started in, and I'm going to walk through again with a video camera, or just my phone. I do the dictation first so that I know what I got to notice on my phone, or on the video. You know, if you go in there blind and try to videotape it, you're going to miss things. I want to be able to walk through this house and know exactly what's going to happen in each room. I go back and I itemize it, write it up, and now I've got the text of what is going to be accomplished in my remodel. Next, I'm going into and I'm making drawings. So, anybody here use any kind of drawing software to lay out their project? You're the one. This is a time-consuming process, but it doesn't have to be complicated. We use a piece of software. It's called Magic Plan. It's a free download on your iPhone. You can go into a house, draw out a square room. You know, you can even hook it up to like a laser level or a laser, what the heck are they called? Laser measuring tape. You take a couple measurements and it automatically populates in the app. It's great. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but if you learn how to use it, you can walk into a house, lay out the property, you measure all the rooms, and walk out with a list of materials that you need to buy. I mean, it's really nice software and it's free. So I would recommend Magic Plan. So I implemented Magic Plan because we kept running into these crazy little problems that ended up costing us a lot of money. We typically would go in and demo a kitchen, and we demo it down to the studs, knowing we're going to have to replace all the mechanicals in the house. And what would come up time after time after time is we knew the area where we wanted the kitchen, but by the time the electricians and the plumbers are coming in to rough things in, we didn't have a kitchen layout per se. So job after job after job, we found consistently we were calling back an electrician to come and move a couple boxes or move the drain in the kitchen to the tune of $150, $200, $500. And it was crazy. So finally I said, look, what can we do to fix this? Well, that's really easy. Lay out the kitchen before you start. I mean, it sounds silly, but take a little bit of time, lay it out, and then you don't have to worry about it. Then you give the drawings to your electrician. You say, this is where I want my lights. This is where, the plumber, this is where we're putting our sink. This is where, the bathrooms are going to be, things like that. Here's the extreme of this. So we, in a lot of our properties, we had a half bathroom on the first floor of the house. It gets us more rent, gets us better appraisal values, and it's a pretty simple add-on. We had 2 properties that were going on side by side about the same time. Plumber comes into the first one, didn't tell him about the half bathroom. Plumber goes in the second one, he knew all about it. Okay. The additional cost on the bathroom, including framing, all the plumbing, and the finishes, is $1,500 if the plumber knew about this beforehand as an add-on to this house. Now, the added value on an appraisal standpoint is like $10,000, so it's a no-brainer. $1,500 to $10,000, that's a really good investment. What we looked at on the house that we had to go back and add that half bathroom, it cost somewhere between $3,500 and $4,000. It's not done yet, and they started at the same time, so it took longer, cost more, almost 3 times the amount, and it's just because we had to redo work. So take the time and plan out your project beforehand so that you don't have to run into that. Once you have your drawings, once you have your scope of work, next you need your budget and your schedule. These are the 2 hardest things to stay, to stick to. They're really hard unless you are absolutely vigilant about, not going over budget and not going over time. Time is, in my opinion, more important to stay to than the budget. Within reason. If you're going to go over $1,000 or 2 weeks, I'd rather give up $1,000 and be done 2 weeks early. you know. So there's a little trick that I've implemented to make sure that we stay on schedule and to manage everybody on schedule. So oftentimes, all right, anybody here that has rehabbed a property, flipped the house, whatever, somebody goes, all right, sitting right back on the high top in the back. When you flip properties, how much work do you do typically on a house? I mean, are we talking $4,000 or $5,000? Are we talking 40, 50, or 400, 500,000? You personally, yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm talking about rehab costs. What do you? $40,000 to $55,000. There we go. Okay. So $40,000 or $55,000 in renovation cost is not, you know, a 1 week job, typically speaking, right? There's a lot that goes into that. Yet a lot of times we look at these large projects as large projects instead of what they really are. What they really are small projects that are done by a whole lot of different really skilled tradespeople. And if you look at the project like that, it's way easier to schedule and manage. And here's what I mean. First day of the project, you start with demo, okay? Demo should be a 2 to 5 day project process. It can cost anywhere from $1,500 to $15,000 depending on the scope. But if it's managed well, you can get in and out of there in 3 days. I know with my typical rehab, in and out of there in 3 days for $2,500 to $3,500. That's it. Great. Well, that's one job. That's one project inside my large scope. My next project is I got to get the windows ordered in the first week. That's it. So, I mean, my first 2 weeks of every project is exactly the same thing. Put it on a new roof, order windows, and demo and clean out the house. If I get those 3 things done in the first 2 weeks, which, by the way, all 3 of them take more than a combined of 5 calendar days. It's not, you know, I'm not shooting for the stars here. But if I can get those 3 things done, I'm on track. Great. So then comes in the next phase. The next phase, I've got an electrician, a plumber, heating and air conditioner. Sometimes I'm going to have a framer, depending on the scope of the work, right? But there's 4 trades, there's 4 different people doing 4 different jobs. If I'm just talking rough-in plumbing and rough-in electric, I know that my cost is going to be about $4,000, $4,500. Framing, if I'm just doing, you know, I'm framing in a bathroom or framing a soffit or something like that, again, $1,000 to $4,000. These are small projects within the larger project. Since I have 4 trades, I give myself 4 weeks. Really, really easy within that time frame and within the scope of work. So in 6 weeks, I have all my mechanicals done, and I got the demo done, I got my windows ordered, they're probably in, you know, my roof's done. So now we start getting ready to close up, and what do I have to do to close up? I got to insulate, and then I start my drywall. Oftentimes there's going to be inspections and things like that happen during that time, but generally speaking, like these, I hope you can see my illustration here. You know, I don't ever want to give a contractor a $50,000 contract unless I've worked with him a lot and he's just a killer. I'd much rather hand out, even if it's to the same person, 10 different contracts for $5,000 a piece and see them accomplish and complete, 100% complete, boom, rough and electric, rough and plumbing, heating and air conditioning, ductwork, and unit installation, you know, and it just goes on throughout the process. If I break it down to these smaller jobs, the likelihood of me getting screwed out of big money is very little. Yes, you know what, sometimes you're going to lose a $1,000 deposit or a $2,000 deposit. It stinks, but is it going to ruin your life? No. You know what's awful? Giving somebody a $20,000 deposit and you never see them again, and then you know you go to their house and you find it. They just moved out last weekend, said the next door neighbor. You know, like, I've done that stuff. It's awful. Don't do that. You know, you live and learn. But these are things that I picked up over the years. You manage these little projects, and they add up to the big projects. All right. So that's your phases. That comes to you know, breaking out the tasks into the smaller trade-specific tasks, and then managing scope within the phase. Great. Okay. Last part of this, inspecting before you pay. My favorite part of this phased construction is because these projects are smaller, you're never arguing about 50 or 75 or 100% finished. it's either done or it's not done. There's no 50%. We don't pay at 50%. I'll give you a deposit up front to get started, and you get the balance when it's done. We're talking about a 1-week project, for each of these things. So you know what? It protects you a lot more throughout the process, and it allows you to basically control the outcome a lot better. Any questions on construction?
Well, first we'll have a 9 to 5. What's your best advice?
Can you, will you repeat that?
9 to 5, and you have to, sometimes it can be challenging to piecemeal a project.
Sure. So you said, how do you manage it with a 9 to 5?
Working a 9 to 5.
Sure. Okay. So the beautiful thing about a 9 to 5 is you have the other 9 to 5, right? So from 5:01 to 9 a.m., you have no obligation. I mean, I'm sure you do, but you've got more time off than you have on. You just make it a priority. I mean, work from 8 till 12 at night, whatever. It's not easy, for sure. It makes it a lot more challenging. If you do not visit your job sites, work will not get done. I mean, almost 100%. So, it's flipping houses. TV makes it look really easy. All you got to do is show up in the beginning and the end, and you're a millionaire. But managing the construction will make or break your project. If you manage it well, you can have a lot of success in the business. If you don't, you're not. I mean, I would, if you're not planning on managing it, I wouldn't go into the investment. That make sense? I mean, I know I don't mean to be so direct, but like, it's that serious. I mean,
I usually pick up my kids at 5, and then I get up to work at 3.
gotcha.
Mommy comes on 7. So what I'm doing now is installing the camera every part of the project.
So one of the other options you have is you can hire a project manager to visit the site. That actually I didn't put it up here either, but this is a tool that I use to manage multiple projects at the same time, and it's called Basecamp. It is a phenomenal way to interact with your contractors. If you have a private lender that wants to keep an eye on the project, interact with them. You can require your contractors to upload photos from the job every day, and you get an update every morning on your phone. You can send these to your investors and clients, things like that. What's up?
Do you have like a formula that you use for your qualification process? For, in other words, I know a lot of rehabbers that I'm friends with, if they put in $50,000 in work, from the beginning they want to know if they're going to get at least $50,000 profit out with resale. I know every deal is different, but
Sure.
personally,
This is a hard question to answer because I don't have a. We're talking about numbers, and I don't have a slide up to show you the numbers. Here's the bottom line. Okay, you're going to look for areas that can consistently give you an 8 to 10% cap rate or capitalization rate. Essentially, that's the net operating income divided by the total cost of the investment. So,
how much should rehab sell?
to sell, I wouldn't do that in this market. It's too competitive on the purchase side. It's way too competitive. Everybody's paying too much money for houses.
Everything you're buying to rehab, you're shipping.
Now, hold on one sec. Tony, can you translate to me? I can't quite hear what he's saying.
Since everything that you're buying to rehab, you're keeping as a rental.
Oh yeah. At what number? What percentage? Like what percentage is your buy-in at?
No, I thought you were reselling these properties.
Oh, no. Okay, so our model, we don't resell the properties. What we do is we essentially wholesale the property. We source the deal, assign it to our client, and we disclose to them up front our fees and everything like that. They see it on the settlement sheet. It's not a question. But then they fund the construction in phases. The first draws do its settlement, and then throughout the construction process, they see the house being done. It's a decision we made to be able to transfer equity to our clients. Every property that we sell has about $20,000 in equity when we're done, in addition to the cash flow and things like that. But that $20,000 in equity would disappear if I bought the properties and renovated them and then resold them. It would essentially be retail. And so, that's not quite as good of an investment. Sorry, Tony, what's up?
Keep in mind what he's talking about with the rehabbing is a market of selling a turnkey rental to a cash-heavy investor for the purpose of long-term cash flow.
Right.
So you're talking about.
It's about 20% equity, give or take, in our investments, right? What our investors are into the property is about 80% of what the value of the asset actually is.
What if you're just talking from a straight up deal perspective? What if you buy it at 20 and it costs 100 to renovate? If you buy it at 100 and it costs 20 to renovate, at the end of the day, cash is cash. It comes to your bottom line. So basing it on the rehab value alone, kind of down a little bit. How we do it is, what's your cost and your cost? Right, at the end of the day, so it's all one number. If it's cost minus your profit, it's left over that.
Is that good? Okay.
So how do you set up your draw schedules? Are you drawing weekly to be able to pay contractors if you're doing short contracts, or how are you doing that?
Sure. So the question was, how do you set up a draw schedule, like with the contractor?
Well, I mean, if you're picking up all your projects in
Yeah.
1 week time frames or 2 week time frames,
Yep.
are you floating the difference between, or how do you break up that draw schedule
What-
with funding?
Okay, so I think we might be misunderstanding each other, right? I'm about to answer something I don't know you're asking, so give me a sec here, okay? The first draw, the way we have it structured, is typically you've got, let's say you have a $40,000 construction, or more accurately, probably $50,000 project, right? We put that into 5 draws. The first 4 draws account for $47,000-ish. The last $3,000 sits there until everything's done. The initial 4 draws are all front-loaded. So we're getting the money to demo the house, put on a roof, order the windows. And then we're getting the money to install all the mechanicals and that kind of stuff, and then the drywall and the kitchens and stuff like that. And so we're being paid up front for these items. The most we'd be floating is the last $3,000 at the end of the project. But I mean, that's a good question. If you're using a private lender that's reimbursing you the funds, this is a really good example of knowing exactly how much money you're going to have for that phase, and not just the contractor saying, "Oh, we'll be done in 4 weeks," and you're paying them by the week. Now it's 6 weeks, and you're like, "Well, hey, amount of money." This is more so, okay, you're getting, it's going to cost me $7,000 to rewire this house. $4,500 is the rough end. Okay, so $2,000 up front, $2,500 when you're done. When they come back and install all the outlets and put in all the breakers, and they finish the place out, they get the remaining $3,000, right? So it's you're only fronting an overage, or the money between the settlement and the first draw, something like that.
So you're not actually taking the property into your name, you're doing it
Correct.
as an investor.
That's right.
That investor is fronting you the money to
That's
be
right.
able to do your.
Well, they're paying their own construction costs. It's essentially. I mean,
You're running as a construction manager, not as an.
that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, it's one of many different models out there. They're slightly different. Yeah. So, anybody here do a home inspection before they bought their last house? Yeah. Okay. I'm saying your primary residence. Anybody not do a home inspection when they bought their primary residence? Okay, a couple. You guys are outliers. Who here did not do a home inspection the last time they finished a construction project? I mean, there are only 2. That's amazing. So you ought to be getting a home inspection. Unless you're a contractor yourself and you really know what you're talking about, get a home inspection when the work's done. This is going to give you a heads up. If you're going to sell the property, you already know what the problems are. Let's let somebody else look at it and tell us what they think the problems are, and see if we can mitigate them before we put it on the market. If you're renting the property, you want to know if there's potential holes for you to step in down the road. Oh, the chimney liner is going to wear out in 3 years. Oh, it cost me $750 now. I might as well just get it done. Or hey, you got some real you have some potential structural issues in a leaning exterior wall. Maybe you want to get it taken care of now before the wall collapses, or it causes further damage. If you find a good home inspector that will walk you through the property, talk to you about what's good and bad about the construction, and give you some insight on things that you should look out for. I'm not, it's important to find a good one, but they're worth their weight in gold. It will also give you insight if the contractor did something at the house that was improper, or maybe you told them to do something that was wrong, and you find out, during the home inspection, hey, this is a code violation, or this is a safety issue, or something like that. These are items that you want to know about, and unless you're doing this on a day-to-day basis, you're probably not going to have the knowledge. Nothing wrong with that, but you just got to fill the gap. Okay? A good home inspection. A home inspection can cost you $300 to $3,000, everything in between. And I've seen really good home inspections done for about $400. I've seen really lousy ones done for $1,200. You got to find somebody that you trust and that can walk you through it. A home inspection should not take an hour. It should be a fairly laborious process. It can take 3 or 4 hours to go through all the things that go through the house. It's time and money well spent if you're going to be buying this place for a long-term investment, just so you know what you're dealing with. And then, yeah.
When you say home inspector,
Yes.
do you hire the home inspector before the work is done to see what the problems are, or
No.
after the work is done to see what you're doing wrong?
Good question. So I'm hiring a home inspector when we are finished. And I use that in air quotes because there's always a punch list when you're done. So I'll probably bring them in when, actually I did a home inspection 2 weeks ago when we didn't have cabinets in the basement. Not a huge deal. It was a basement apartment, but not a huge deal because I knew the cabinets weren't there. I'm most worried about the things that I overlooked, I forgot about, I didn't, even with all of our checklists and things like that, things that are going to cause me problems down the line. And oftentimes those problems end up being big problems tomorrow, but today they're not that expensive to fix, and not that tough when the tenant's not in the house. As an example, we had we kept an old heater in the property, and the motherboard, I guess, was defective, wasn't working properly, whatever. Didn't even think anything of it. It was a forced air heater and it was 5 years old. There's no reason for me to think that it's not working. It was brought up by the home inspector. We found out the motherboard was broken, and it costs, I don't even remember. It wasn't a huge amount of money. But if we had a tenant moved into the property and they go to kick the heat on, it won't come on. And it's 9 o'clock on Friday night, and I'm trying to find a heating contractor to go over there and service that and fix it before the tenants get pissed off at me. You know what I mean? It's going to be a lot more expensive than just fixing it now. So that's the kind of thing that you get some insight on. Last thing you have to do before you start leasing your property, have to 100%, is clean the house and then have it cleaned again. Get that place really as spotless as you can. It'll run a lot faster if you do. Okay. So this is all I have for construction and project management. Before we go on, any questions on that? Yep.
I still don't get it. Do you do inspection pre-construction or during post-construction?
Post-construction. Yeah. Because look, I already know what I'm replacing going into the property. If I took a home inspector into some of these places that I'm buying, the thing would be 50 pages. Shoot, they're already 50 pages. It'd be 1,000 pages long. Everything needs to go. It's not worth it for me to go into a property that I know everything we touch is going to go. I want to get in there and see the things that I missed. That make sense? Yeah.
Lead inspections.
Okay. So lead's big in Baltimore City, right? It's not so big in the suburbs. Or the regulations are different, right? When you leave the city, they're the same.
It's big in the county. In the county, it's big.
They're big. Okay. All right. So lead's. I don't even want to touch on this. Why'd you bring that up? So lead laws are going to vary depending on where you're going to invest. if you're investing in an area that has a lot of lead regulation, gut the house to the studs and the brick walls, reframe it, rebuild it, and move on from there. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? What's that? Yeah. What was the question? Was mooning? Okay.
So there's two lead inspections. The first one is a dust test.
Right.
They go to the windows, they're all windows.
Right.
Wipes and set it all.
So, well,
The
let's.
newer, more expensive one goes through all layers of paint down to whatever the material is.
Right. Hold on right there. Let's back up a couple steps here. So there are different types of lead tests that can vary from as simple as a dust test, where essentially if you clean the property really well before they come in and do the test, there's no way you can fail. That's to get the dust particulate from the air and prevent it from being inhaled by kids and having all kinds of lead poisoning in that way. The other type of lead testing is going to be way more invasive. It can be as detailed as testing soil samples to make sure that there's no lead in the soil and the surrounding areas. 8 years, it's like 5 years ago, they proposed doing something like that in Philadelphia, where they were going to be testing soil and all this and all that. I mean, and of course, the areas that are hardest hit from something like that are areas that can't afford to have an extra $50,000 in lead mitigation be put on top of them. So thankfully, it didn't happen in my market, but because it's in Baltimore, it's something to be worried about. If you have any kind of cracked or flaking paint, that's a problem. I mean, anywhere. I mean, these houses, anything built before 1978, there is lead-based paint in the property. The only way to get rid of it is to either encapsulate it or remove it altogether. Encapsulating it, you're basically just painting over top of it. You get rid of all the curling edges and flakes, scrape it off, sand it down, and then go over top of it with a latex-based alternative or whatever. But that's going to be short-lived. The easier alternative and more expensive is to rip it all out, and you end up with more of a new construction type model. Dominion Capital is not Capital, but what's the name of the Dominion Group? They do a lot of development in Baltimore City, and almost all of it looks like new construction for that very reason. They're going and buying blocks of property at a time, gutting them down to nothing, and rebuilding from there. A lot of it is because of the lead-based paint and the liability that you're exposed to. It can be pretty significant. It's probably not going to be. If you do the right stuff and you work with within the guidelines and generally try to do the best thing for the people that you're working with or that are renting from you, it shouldn't be an issue. Like, something to keep in mind. Anything else construction related?
For a newbie who have not gone through all these processes, would you advise him or her to hire a general contractor?
I do not like general contractors. So we just talked about this specifically because you're going to need to control the process. You don't have to get crazy detailed. This is what we do, and there's reasons for each step. But if you set the job up right, if you know exactly what you're going to do and what you want the place to look like when it's finished, and you don't piecemeal that part together, it's easy enough to hire someone to come in and do demolition on the property. It's easy enough to hire an electrician or a plumber. It's easy enough to get a roofer or a window installer to come out and give you bids and do work on the house. When you hire a general contractor, I find that a lot of time, because of where our economy is, like there's a lot of money in construction, there's a lot of building going on, so prices have gone up. People that I'm oftentimes dealing with, they might call themselves general contractors, but they're not. What they really are really good drywall installers, or decent carpenters that can put in a kitchen. They can do some tile work over here. What I've found is that if I manage the construction project, if I hire the people in the beginning, the skilled trades, the roofer, the window guy, the demo, all the way up through drywall, I'm going to pay those subcontractors less than my general contractor would. But I'm not paying him any more for the job. So what I found often, it was happening over and over until we made the change, is that we'd hire a general contractor for $50,000 to get this job done, and 50% through the job, he had 35% of the money left. You know, and it's not that it was being funneled anywhere inappropriately, it's just that we allotted $4,500 for rough and electric, and he paid $6,000. You know, I mean, even though he was only paid $4,500 for the job. So for me, there's definitely a place for general contractors. People, I've argued with a lot of people about this, but it's got to be the right one. And it's got to be the kind of situation where they're making enough money that they're making the money to actually manage the project, right? So that $50,000 construction project might cost you $75,000 to do it through, you know, this other company, and that's okay. Like the $25,000, it's going to profit, and sure, they're a company, you know, they got to get paid. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you're going to hire a general contractor, they're going to be paid for the oversight in the property, and you know, then you're going to, underneath that, have all the subcontractors they're going to be managing that have to be paid as well. So you should, you know, budget for that and anticipate it. All right?
You hired them trade for a different part of the project. How do you keep contractors from fighting?
How do we what?
How do you keep contractors from fighting bigger?
How do we keep contractors what?
Fighting.
Fighting? Fighting? Man, that's really easy. I mean, it would not be smart for me to send my drywall team in while the plumbing's being installed, right? That would really poor planning, you know? Or worse, if I sent my plumber in after the drywall team, right? That would be even worse. It's all about scheduling. You know, it's all about these phases. If you know that the drywall crews are going to go in and they're going to be running all over the house, and in 2 days they're going to hang all this drywall, and there's going to be a mad mess in there, and they're going to have, you know, 6 guys all over the house, why the heck would you send anybody in to do flooring? You just wouldn't do that. You've got to schedule it out so you know, okay, phase 3 is includes insulation and drywall, and then you know, we're going to put down our floors. So that's phase 3. Well, drywall is going to probably be 2 weeks. Might not be, but I'm going to budget for it, right? So a week to hang and a week to tape and spackle. Okay, so week 3 we're going to do the floors. Just don't overlap them. And the biggest catch, or not catch, but the best way to stay out of the way is stay out of the way. Post the name of the next contractor, like put your construction project, or put the schedule in the house with the contact information of the other contractors working there. So you know, if one of your guys is inconsiderate and you know leaves all his crap all over the house, let the other guys give him a hard time. I mean, you're going to say something too, but post it there. That interaction, like oftentimes we're the bottlenecks. You want to be able to control everything without being in the way, because that's the goal. Once we get in the way, we become a bottleneck, and now everybody's got to go to you to tell, you know, to say they're running down to Home Depot to get, you know, $100 of material. Like, get out of that conversation, right? Yep.
So when you're developing your scope, from what I'm hearing from you, is you're basically taking an old shell, but you're making it brand new. So
it's not brand new, but it's close. That's right. Yes.
But that's your concept.
Yes.
In that process, you're buying it cheap enough where you have 20% equity at the end of the day.
That's exactly right. And we're actually buying it cheap enough that there's 20% equity to our clients, and we make about $20,000 on a project. So I mean, we're really negotiating deep discounts and adding a lot of value in construction. So let me show you what our finished products look like. Hold on here. Thanks. Okay. So these are our finished products. I didn't want to go too in depth here with before and afters and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, every single house looks the same. We've got the same cabinets, we've got the same appliances, we've got the same floors, same trim, same, you know, tile in the bathrooms. Will you do the next one here? So this is a single family. Yeah. All right. This is a multifamily. Again, same tile, same colors, same layouts, same everything. By making everything the same, it makes it so simple. I already know that the tenants in this area are going to like this rental, the look of this rental. I already know that, it's going to attract the highest rents in the area. So why change anything? And it just, it's easy enough, all right? Okay, so securing capital. Let's move forward. All right. How's everybody financing their deals right now?
Hard money loans.
Hard money?
Hard money loans.
Our money and savings.
Okay, savings, hard money.
Your first floor.
Doctor give
Oh man, we got to talk, man. Good. Really, savings accounts, hard money. Most of our clients are people that they're people that would like to invest in real estate, right? But they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the time to deal with it. Okay. So I'd say 85% of our purchases are all cash. But there are some pretty interesting places that you can find cash in your life without actually having to reach in and empty out your savings account. And every week I'm amazed to talk to somebody new that comes up with a different source of capital. So you have savings accounts, you got retirement accounts. With the retirement accounts, if it's your own retirement account, you can't lend the money to yourself. You can't buy a house that's owned by yourself with your retirement funds. Make sure you're going through a fiduciary and doing that correctly. Just as an aside, friends and family, be smart about this if you want to keep them your friends and family. Just keep it at arm's length. All right, private lenders. Private lenders are where I've gotten a lot of money over the years. Private lenders they could be friends and family, they could be business associates. They're people with just a retirement account that's sitting there getting them 4%, give them 10%. Essentially, they act as the bank. They're going to front the acquisition and/or construction costs. They get paid back with the refinance or the sale of the property. Okay. Margin loans. This one I love. So we've got a good handful of clients that do a lot in the stock market. This guy's telling me he's getting his money at 6.5%, and it's just like hard money. And I'm going, what hard money lender is at 6.5% with no points? Well, he's getting a margin loan. He's got a stock portfolio. He's able to keep his money in the stock market and keep those gains, but borrow against it because it's got an innate value, right? So that's a pretty darn cheap loan with great collateral for the lender. So it's just, you got to think outside of the box a little bit. And hard money we're sponsored here by Hard Money Bankers. Whether you're using Hard Money Bankers or a different hard money lender, if you're just getting started, you should 100% use hard money. It's a third party that looks over your shoulder and makes sure that you're not totally screwing up a deal. And as you start doing volume and you get to the point where you're sick and tired of talking to 40 lenders all the time, 40 private lenders that want to know when you're going to finish the project, hard money looks a lot more attractive. When you get to the point where customer relations and investor relations becomes a big part of your day and a big part of your business, it becomes a much more attractive option. All of these, there's a bunch more. You want to put a house on credit cards and things like that, you can do it. I wouldn't recommend it. But these are some pretty solid sources for acquisition, construction funding. Long-term hold, there's a couple different options depending on what you're trying to do. If you are just trying to buy a second, your first investment property, first cash flowing rental property, I would buy it in my name. Buy it in your name, get a conventional 30-year fixed, take the cheap money as long as you can get it. Once you get into a commercial product where you're buying in an LLC or you have more than, I think it's 10 loans, you're going to be forced to go to a commercial product, which is not bad. Typically, these loans are going to be a little bit more aggressive on their ARV. This is more observation than cause and effect. It just so happens that I've seen a lot more positive ARV appraisals on commercial loans, but they're going to be amortized over 20 years, and they're probably going to be about a point higher on the interest rate, which means your cash flow is going to be pretty significantly affected by that, okay? But it also means that over time you're going to pay a lot less in debt or in interest payments. So you can kind of look at it on the plus and minus. But what the sweet spot here is right in this local banks and portfolio lending, okay? So if you go to get a mortgage from Bank of America or TD Bank or Chase Bank, whatever, the likelihood is they're going to sell that mortgage on the secondary market, right? So it's going to have to conform, which means they're going to have limits on the debt to value that they can loan. They're going to have limits on the terms. They're going to limit how they're going to give you seasoning requirements. If you buy a house in cash, renovate it in cash, and try to go get your money back from a conforming lender, they're going to tell you to come and see them in a year. It could be a lot of money you have tied up for a year, especially if you don't know that it could take that long to refi. But if you get a hard money loan, you can do it as little as 6 months. That's nice, good to know. 6 months, again, kind of a long time to have tied up in this property if I'm anticipating 90-day refi. So these local banks, what you're looking for are local lenders that keep their own notes. They're a portfolio lender, they're lending out their own money or their investors' money, but they don't have nearly the restrictions that you might have with a traditional lender. They get to pick the terms, they get to pick their loan to value, they get to pick who they're going to work with, they get to pick how long they're going to amortize it for, and what the seasoning requirements are, and what kind of skin in the game you're going to have. A lot of times you have local banks that kind of trade off who's the hot hand with the best rates and the best refi terms. We've seen them in our market up to 85% loan to value, cash out refi in as little as 90 days, which is kind of crazy, and it makes me a little concerned maybe where the market's going. But that's a very good leverage point. If you're an investor and you say, look, I'm looking at 5% interest rate on a fixed rate mortgage for the next 30 years, and I can get all my money plus some every time I buy a house. My goodness, you just keep repeating that model over and over and over, and it's great. And then the last option here is more when you've got $2, $3, $4, $5 million in real estate that you're looking to pull a big chunk of capital out of. You can go in and do a blanket loan on multiple properties all at one time. It's most advantageous when you got a ton of equity in one and not so much in another, and you're just trying to pull capital out and lower the number of loans that you have to service on a monthly basis. That's a pretty good situation there.
Is that a portfolio lender that's giving you a blanket financing, or is that a conventional national?
Sorry, is the portfolio lender a national lender, you said?
No. For the blanket financing,
Yes.
who's providing that?
So oftentimes it's a commercial product that's going to come from a local bank, or even more and more, there are a lot of national players that are portfolio lenders. They just have a smaller portfolio and a much more specific and focused guidelines on what they will accept on a loan. Like they may just be looking for single family residences between $2.5 and $5 million. Like that's a pretty small market, but they'll loan on those terms anywhere in the country. So there's so many products on the market right now. There's so many financial products, so many loan products on the market. I've talked to, let's say I had 3 clients. I talked to three different people with very similar backgrounds, financially pretty stable, whatever. They'll talk to 3 different lenders, and each one of them will get 3 different answers from the same 3 lenders. So it just depends on your own specific criteria, not criteria, but your own specific credit, your own finances. It's gonna vary from place to place and from person to person. Okay. Questions on finding money?
Where do you secure the margin loan?
What's that?
The margin loan? Where can you secure?
The margin loan? Okay, so a margin loan is when you have a stock portfolio, and let's say you had $1 million in the market. You can take a loan against that stock portfolio because it has an innate value. It's an asset. You can borrow against the asset. And so that's essentially what you're doing on the margin loan. Save $1 million in stocks, you get a loan for $200,000, let's say. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, for the savings or retirement accounts,
Yep.
that would.
You can't take somebody else's.
No.
I'm just
Somebody
kidding.
else.
I'm just kidding.
Actually, I was investing my own money at first, right? But I'm trying to now keep the money in the accounts
Mm-hmm.
and then borrow off of that. Which, what is that? That's somewhat like margin loan or somewhat like a.
So okay, so you're saying like to develop a credit history on it? Is that what you're saying? Or
No, instead of taking all the cash out to buy the property myself
Right.
and everything,
Mhm.
I'm gonna keep the, let's say, $200,000, and I want to go to a bank and then borrow $100,000 because I have this money here.
okay, so they're going to want to hold on to that money in case you decide not to pay them the other money back. I mean, typically, what they're going to want to be able to secure that asset, whatever it is. So if it's if it's a margin loan, they're going to want a way to collect if you disappear. If it's a house, they're going to put a mortgage on it. It's the same kind of thing with that. Oftentimes, I've heard of people buying a CD at a bank and using that as leverage, just to build up a credit history, or payment history of loans and things like that. But I don't know about getting a loan against cash deposits. I'm sure there's an opportunity for that, but it would have to be. You'd probably have to have a relationship with the bank, and
So to just back up for a second, your rehab, if it's about 50,000, how quickly are you getting them done?
What's that?
If you're doing a rehab at about 50K, how quickly are you getting this done?
90 to 100 days.
How many?
90 to 100 days.
3 months.
3 months ish.
Okay.
I mean, it's not magic, but I can't do it in 50 days for sure. You know what I mean? It's like 90 days ends up being about what it takes. Yeah.
Retirement accounts, you can roll your retirement into a self-directed IRA and use that self-directed IRA to fund deals.
You cannot use your self-directed IRA to fund you. If you do, you're going to be in violation, and there's all kinds of fines and penalties and craziness. No. You are not allowed to be a principal in more than 35% of the company.
Roll into a company.
You can loan it to someone else's company. You can't loan it to a company that you own more than 35% in. If you loan it to yourself, you can't loan it to your brother or sister. You can't loan it to your mother or father. There's a bunch of specific qualifications. If you're going to use retirement funds, find a fiduciary that knows exactly what complies and what doesn't, and makes it hard to take the money out. I mean, that's a big no-no. You roll over this money and throw it into this retirement account for 20, 30, 40 years. You want to make sure that it's still tax sheltered and that you're collecting on that stuff. Yep.
The confusion is you can do it in your IRA, but the money has to go back into your IRA.
That's exactly right. And the IRA actually owns the asset.
Right.
You don't own it. It's owned by your retirement vehicle. Correct. Yep. Can you say that again, please?
Your IRA can buy one of your turnkey properties.
Yeah.
And then the rent goes into the IRA.
So you said you divide the IRA and your physical property, right? And your own personal property? Is that what you said or no?
You sell turnkey properties, right?
Yeah.
The IRA can buy one of your turnkey properties, and then the rent money has to go into the IRA.
Yes, absolutely, correct. I mean, essentially these retirement accounts, they're like totally different people. They do whatever they do, and you're going to instruct them on what to do, but they're not you. So you can't treat those funds as if it is you. That's pretty much the bottom line, right? Yeah.
You can do a lot of stuff, just have an attorney look at it first.
That's right.
because you're
That's
gonna
fair.
get-
Exactly.
You go one way, you can't go the other. There's a lot of laws about that.
Yeah, exactly.
We did a whole meetup with just like this all-on self-directed IRAs.
Okay.
If anybody wants to check it out, we're streaming live, probably still available on Facebook. But it's ever-changing. We recently funded a deal where whoever his manager was was able to structure it where his IRA provided the cash to close
Yep.
and funded the rehab while he did the rest in his own name.
It was probably like a share ownership between the IRA and the person. And you can do that. It is really, really tricky.
But yeah, that's
Like,
fine.
it's-
It's,
yeah.
you know, leave the lawyers to do law
Yeah.
and the accountants to do accounting.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. All right. Any other questions about financing? Awesome. Okay. Now we're going to move on to where are we at? All right. So I almost didn't put this slide in here, but let's say you saw this as a flip model, or you wanted to start your own business, your own turnkey business. I'm going to tell you exactly how to find the buyers. Okay. So first of all, who are these people? Who do you want to buy? Who do you want to sell? So when I first got into turnkey investing, my first client was an Israeli airline pilot, and he showed up in our project or property management office and kind of described what he wanted us to do, and it sounded like an interesting idea. So, sent the guy a bunch of properties, picked out one, bought it. You know, we renovated and leased it up and managed the property, and then started buying a bunch more. Because my first client was, you know, from halfway around the world, I built a model based on people buying from halfway around the world. And while there's a big demand for overseas investors to buy in the United States, they often don't have a realistic expectation of what kind of returns that they can receive, or what, or really anything that has to do with money, except that you're asking too much. So over the last several years, you know, our model's changed quite a bit, and our clients have become closer and closer to home because they know the market, they understand what's happening, and it's easier for them to see the benefit of that kind of thing. So if you were looking for a turnkey investor or a turnkey buyer, there's a couple things you want to look at. First, you want to make sure they can afford it. What I've found is a sweet spot in like 28 to 30-year-olds that have made money in Bitcoin. I mean, a lot of money in Bitcoin. That has, you know, oftentimes these are young men that engineers, or, you know, in like the sciences, things like that, people that have made decent incomes, but really, you know, made a couple $100,000 over a 90-day period investing in Bitcoin or you know, some of the other cryptocurrencies, and they're looking to put it in real estate. Or they just have saved really well since the time they were 18, and they got 100 grand that they want to invest in real estate. Oftentimes, the people that I'm working with, they know a lot about the idea of investing in real estate without a lot of practical knowledge, you know, and they don't have the time, or they don't have the interest to take it to a point where it makes sense for them to execute on their own. Okay. So yeah, our target demographic is 28 to 50. After 50, it's still a really advantageous investment. It just is the timeline. We're looking at like a 5 to 10 year timeline, and for many people, it's, you know, that puts them right in retirement. It's a little bit longer of a event horizon than they're really looking for. So typically, I'm looking at, as I said, 28 to 50. We're looking at annual household income, 125 to 225,000. What I found is above 225, what you start running into is people that have more money to invest, but they're looking for a larger investment. You know, I've had people, you know, say, hey, like, we'd like to invest $2 million in your market. Well, that's great, but that's 20 properties. That's, you know, that's 3 months of inventory and 3 months of execution there in one fell swoop. Our typical client is going to buy one property at a time, maybe 3 properties a year. So, you know, it ends up being a good price point for us. And then location, I kind of discussed this. Most of our clients, about 60%, are within driving distance. We have a 20% Israeli contingency because there's I don't know, a lot of Israelis want to invest in Philadelphia, apparently. And then we've got about 5% is other US-based investors, about 5% around the world, people that would like to invest in the area. You guys ready to run out and start generating leads? This whole process of bringing in our client base and our buyer base, This is about 30% of our entire company is building and running this funnel. The hardest thing for us to do is communicate what we do. Everybody has their own idea of what a turnkey investment is and looks like. Very few people have the same idea in their head as what we end up executing. So we'll oftentimes spend 10 hours on the phone or in person with a client before they buy. Because when they do buy, it's likelihood that they're going to do it again and again and again. So, I'm not going to get into crazy detail with finding buyers, except to say that the type of people that you're looking for are the type of people that want all the benefits of investing in real estate, like the tax benefits, depreciation, appreciation, cash flow, without all of the headaches and running toilets and leaky roofs and crying tenants and all that kind of stuff, right? That's what people want. And the second part of this that we're going to go into, and it might be less than the second part, the big part of this is the management and leasing part. You can put together a great product, but unless you have the right tenant and the right management of that asset in place, it's going to be short-lived. All right. So, questions about buyers?
The 60% driving distance, what does it mean?
Within an hour and a half drive. I mean, most of my clients are from New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and a few in Maryland. So I mean, you get in the car and you're there in a couple hours. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, believe it or not, a lot of people that invest in real estate want to be able to see the real estate from time to time. So that plays into it a lot.
Where are most of your properties?
Where are most people from what?
Where are most of your properties? Where are most of your properties?
Oh, they're all in Philadelphia. We've got 13 neighborhoods in Philadelphia located. About 9 of them are in West Philadelphia. The rest are in the northwest quadrant of the city, which is right along Montgomery County in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Okay, great. All right, so let's take a look at the management side of this. Once, I'm jumping my fence. Okay. Yep. Will you guys get back to work? I mean, I need some help in here. All right. Anybody ever placed a bad tenant? 1, 2, okay. I've had some really, really bad tenants. A year and a half ago, I placed these 2 women and this little girl into a completely renovated place. They moved in with a 700 credit score and $129,000 annual income. They paid the first month, last month, and 1 month security when they moved in. And a year later, they were evicted from the property. The last money I got from them was when they moved into the house. That is a terrible situation, right? It's one that we don't want to replicate ever. Bad tenants are most of the time the cause of either bad landlords or bad leases or whatnot. Sometimes they just happen, right? But we want to prevent that from just happening with any kind of reasonable frequency. So I have a screening process. I go with the 3-legged stool. The idea here is that we got a 3-legged stool sitting here in the front. If all 3 legs are sitting on the floor, it's a great stool, great place to sit. You take one of those legs out and the thing's going to fall over. But I'm sure we could find a box or something to stick under it to kind of prop it up. And now, when I'm talking about leasing, I'm talking about, all right, leg number 1 is our income. We want to be able to verify with bank deposits, payroll checks, receipts, whatever it is. If they're getting paid in cash, I want to see that money go into a bank account. I want some consistencies that I can document that these people month after month after month are making at least 3 times the monthly rent. Okay, that's 1. Number 2, credit and background. There are some people that always pay their rent and don't pay anything else. It just happens. But not knowing an applicant from anybody else, I'm going to take a look at their credit. I'm going to look at, number 1, are they paying everything? If so, that's great. If they're not, what are they not paying? Medical bills, are things that don't really faze me. Student loan, you know, if they're not paying those, and that's the vast majority of their debt that's being unpaid, I'm going to probably overlook it and take a deeper dive into, you know, their income and their background check. But if I see stuff like a charge-off on a car or a collection on a car, if somebody's not paying their car payment, they're probably having trouble getting to work. If they can't get to work, they can't make any money. If they can't make any money, they can't pay their rent. So I'm looking for recent defaults or a history of consistently not paying bills. Okay? The other part of that is oftentimes you'll get a credit and background combination report that's not just a credit report, it's also a criminal background check. Now, I look at, I've got a couple things that I look for on these criminal checks. I don't want to see any drug offenses within the last 5 years, that's number one. Specifically with sales. You know, possession, it's not that big of a deal, but depending on what it is. But you know, you see sales 3 years ago, makes me a little nervous. Second thing is anything with a handgun or violent crimes, forget it. Not at all. Anything that has to do with crimes with children, not at all. Not running to them, automatic denial. But if they pass these two screenings, okay, so I'm almost there, right? The last thing I want to look at is rental history. Do we have any landlords in here, or am I just, okay. You're a landlord. When was the last time you called the prior landlord and it was like her uncle that, you know, or her best friend and they couldn't tell you how much they paid in rent, or, you know. So, what do they say about tenants? How do you know a tenant's lying? Their mouth's moving, right? You've got to verify everything. So if you're going to get references on from prior landlords, you're going to get phone numbers, call up the landlords, and you have to get in touch with them first of all, right? Maybe it's easier for an email, maybe it's easier for a phone call, whatever, but be vigilant, reach out to them, see if you can get them on the phone. And then start asking questions that they should know the answers to, but they're pretty specific. So when she'd move in, when was the last time she called for a service call? You remember how much she's paying on rent? When was the last time she was late? I mean, these are simple questions, but if you have somebody that has never been late, and I'm talking the first, you know, maybe the check shows up on the third one time in 2 years. I remember that stuff. I remember when it came in. If we're running out of time? Okay, all right. When was the last time they called for a service call? Like, look, every tenant calls for a maintenance call at least once, you know? You want to know that stuff. If they don't have an answer, or they're kind of evasive in answering the question, or broad or vague, it's probably not the right person, right? Once you finally do get to talk to the landlord, get into it. You know, hey, what do you really think of this person? Are you just trying to get rid of them? I have had landlords trying to get rid of tenants, giving glowing recommendations, and you find out that, you know, they're 3 months behind on the rent. And they just don't want to evict them. They just want to get them out. See if you can get 2 landlords ago, 3 landlords ago. You know, you want to be able to get kind of a track record. And if you are unable to get in touch with, you know, with a landlord or prior landlord, stop in at their house. See how they're living now. You know, it's unlikely they're going to treat your place any different than they treat the place they're living in now. So, you know, check it out. This is a lot of work up front, right? But you're going to get married to these tenants. Once they move into your house, it takes months and thousands of dollars to get them out. So make sure you pick the right one. You know, you want to go through this. So now, let's say you've got somebody, this happens a lot. You get a young kid, he's getting his first apartment, right? He's got great credit or no credit, but we'll take that, that's fine. His income's got a first job, he's looking for an apartment, great, but he's got no rental history. That's easy, I'll rent him all day long. I just need mom and dad to give me a cosigner. That's the box underneath that, you know, underneath that stool, keeping up that third leg, right? If you got somebody with some credit problems, but they have good rental history and they have good income, hey, get a cosigner or put up a second security deposit or just security deposit, you know? If you've got somebody with not enough income, if they can't afford to pay, they're not going to pay. You know, it's pass. The idea here is we want to accept as many applicants as we can that will be good tenants and will take care of our property in the long term, right? In order to do that, like, this works pretty darn well. You know, there's problems that sometimes pop up, but this works pretty well with the analysis. Hey, Jason. Forget that. All right. So we're coming to the last part here. All right. Okay, if you're building a portfolio and that's why you're here, and that's the goal, go find a great manager, a great property manager, instead of dealing with the management yourself. If you've got one property, it's fairly easy to do. If you have 2 or more properties, it gets pretty crazy pretty fast. So there's 3 basic responsibilities here that you got to worry about. Number 1, rent collection. Pretty easy. You know, the tenant says they're going to pay. I'm sure the check will be there by the 1st of every month. If not, what happens next? You need to put together a process of how to call, when to call, what to say, when to send the certified letter, when to show up at their door and put a big orange sticker on the front of their door that says, notice of an intent to evict. All these things do big things when it comes to collections. If you don't call,